Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Myself and my party have been consistent over the last 4 years in voting against this country leaving the European Union. And we do that for many reasons, but most of all because that is what the people who elected us to speak for them in this place want. Scotland did not vote for this, and Scotland does not want this. But we have never in these debates suggested that the result of the 2016 Brexit referendum should be ignored, set aside or overturned by this Parliament. What we have said is it is the legitimate and proper role of an elected Parliament to consider the consequences of this course of action, and if in our judgment we believe those consequences to be sufficiently dire, then we should allow the opportunity for the people of the country to reconsider the decision they took in 2016 in full knowledge of the facts and knowledge that we now have available. And what is at risk now is the right of this Parliament to exercise that degree of judgment. It is a shame in many ways that we have to move this motion tonight and that we have to pass emergency legislation tomorrow. It ought to be the other way around. A government, particularly a minority government, ought to be coming to this chamber, trying to find consensus, trying to explain itself, trying to get us behind it. But instead, that is not happening. And the reason why so many people find it necessary to do what we are going to do tonight is simply because we have lost faith in this government. Not only has the government today, lost its majority, but it has also lost the trust of this House. We do not believe the Prime Minister when he says he is trying to get a deal. We see no evidence of this whatsoever. And we do not believe the Prime Minister when he says he respects parliamentary democracy, because he is trying to shut down the ability of this House to debate his actions and their consequences. I'll take the intervention.
I thank the honourable friend, the honourable gentleman, for giving way. He was talking about compromise. We had an opportunity to compromise back in spring, one on the customs union. We only left by 3 votes. We lost by 3 votes in that customs union vote. I would ask, where were he and his SNP colleagues then, when it was SNP policy on single market and customs union, where we could have had a compromise and avoid this? This isn't about time. This is about compromise. Show us you're willing to do it.
No. The honourable member is wrong, because the seeds of this problem were sown long before that. They were sown when a right-wing Conservative government decided to seize on the result of the referendum and use that narrow majority and interpret it for its own ends to restructure this country and its international relationships and its economy. And even now we see a situation where the government is committed to pursuing the hardest of Brexits, crashing out without a deal if it deems that necessary, and you actually even believe that that is the preferred course of action. And it knows not only is there no majority in this House for that course of action, there is no majority in the country either for that course of action. Now that brings me to the topic of the election, which is an associated matter here, because there have been suggestions that are we to do this, then the Prime Minister will immediately throw his toys out of the pram and go to the country and demand a general election. And we already had an echo of the gross populism from the Leader of the House that may well come to be reflected in that campaign, something which I think does his character no great service, to be honest. But if that is the election that is going to come, then let us be quite clear. We need to have an election before this country crashes out of the European Union without a deal. So we're ready for an election. Bring it on, but either have it before the 31st of October or extend that deadline of the 31st of October so that we can make a decision as a people and elect a parliament before this fait accompli is presented to them. That would be the legitimate thing to do. And I would ask the Prime Minister that if he really wants to have an election, then don't engage in these procedural shenanigans and this duplicity in trying to game the Parliament. Put the proposal for a no-deal Brexit to the electorate. Put that to the electorate, explain the consequences, and see if that is what they vote for. And when that happens, I will relish the prospect to contest that election, because we shall not only be contesting that election in order to prevent and stop Brexit and have a reconsideration of that strategy, but we shall also be explaining to the people of Scotland that this is their chance to consider having a different course of action than the one which they have been led down by the current Prime Minister, and I am confident that when we go to the people of Scotland, so many more than ever before will not understand the attractiveness of having political independence over their own affairs and being able to control their own destiny and establish their own relationships with the rest of the countries in Britain, in Europe and the world. And that is what is coming down the track. I warn the government to be aware of it.